Beloved, sometimes life will strip you, shake you, pull things from your hands you thought you could never live without. You look at the empty places in your life and wonder, Lord, how do I go forward from here? But hear me today. God never allows subtraction without preparing multiplication. He never closes a door without constructing a greater one on the other side. You might feel broken, but you are being rebuilt. You might feel emptied, but God is making room. What was lost was not the end, it was the seed. And when God restores, He doesn't just give back, He elevates. He exceeds. He replaces the ordinary with the extraordinary. So don't cling to what slipped away. Lift your eyes to what is coming, because the God we serve specializes in divine exchange. And He is about to replace what you lost with something greater than you ever imagined. Can you believe for greater? Can you worship for greater? Because greater is not coming. Greater is already on the way. Loss is often God's preparation for promotion. And that truth can feel wild when you're in the middle of it, because when life starts pulling things away, the human instinct is to panic, to hold tighter, to wonder what went wrong. You look around and see empty chairs where people used to sit, quiet where laughter used to be, opportunities that seem so solid suddenly slipping through your fingers. And something in you wants to say, God, why did you let this happen? But sometimes God isn't punishing you, He's positioning you. Sometimes what you call breaking is really building, and what you call ending is really birthing. When God is getting ready to elevate you, He often begins by shaking loose everything that cannot go with you to the next level. Not because it was bad, not because you failed, but because destiny has weight limits, and the next thing God is doing in your life requires room, focus, clarity, and new strength. Think about it. If you were always comfortable, always surrounded by everything familiar, always holding on to what you already had, you would never stretch, never grow, never move. Comfort rarely births greatness. You cannot rise while clinging to what was. So sometimes God lets life strip away the false building blocks, the shaky foundations, the temporary supports you thought you needed, just so He can show you the strength He placed in you all along. And in those moments, it may feel like injustice. It may feel like abandonment. It may feel like the worst loss you've ever endured. But heaven sees it differently. Heaven calls it alignment. Heaven calls it pruning so you can bear more fruit. Heaven calls it refining so you come out stronger, wiser, sharper, more grounded than before. Think of Joseph. He didn't walk straight into the palace. He walked through betrayal, a pit, a prison. Every loss felt like a step backward, but each one was really a setup, repositioning him for the exact place God needed him to be. David didn't go from the pasture to the throne without first losing safety, losing comfort, losing approval, even losing the familiarity of home. Ruth didn't step into destiny until she walked away from everything familiar and everything she thought her life would look like. Loss wasn't failure. Loss was the passageway, the doorway, the necessary discomfort that shaped their faith and fixed their focus. And the same God who authored their story is writing yours. Sometimes the blessing is not in what God gives, but in what He removes. There are relationships that felt precious, but were blocking you. There are opportunities that look promising, but would have boxed you in. There are seasons that felt good, but would have kept you too small. God cares too much about your purpose to let you stay with what you outgrew. So if you feel like something slipped through your hands, don't assume defeat. Don't assume rejection. Don't assume you missed your moment. You might be standing in the divine classroom of transition. You might be in the middle of a holy rearranging. You might be grieving what you thought your life would be while heaven is preparing you for what you were born to become. Promotion doesn't always show up looking like elevation at first. Sometimes it looks like loss, pruning, shaking, silence, even isolation. You might be crying over what left while God is celebrating what's coming. You might feel like the story is falling apart while God is turning the page. So lift your head, even if tears are still falling. Square your shoulders, even if they feel heavy. Keep walking, even if your legs are shaking. Loss is not the finale. It is the furnace where God forges champions. It is the clearing where God builds platforms. It is the empty field where new seeds are planted. Your tears are watering tomorrow's testimony, and your disappointment is making space for divine appointment. Trust that when God subtracts, He intends to multiply. Trust that when He closes a door, He has already ordained a better one. Stand in the center of your uncertainty and declare, I may not understand the loss, but I trust the God of restoration. I may feel emptied, but I am being prepared. I may feel stripped, but I am being positioned. I am not losing, I am transitioning. God never wastes a loss. Not one tear, not one heartbreak, not one closed chapter will return void. He is preparing you, stretching you, and setting you up for a level you didn't even pray for, because He saw more in you than you saw in yourself. So hold on to your faith, even if it's trembling. Keep believing, even if doubt whispers. Because loss doesn't mean God left you. Loss means God is leading you, and what's ahead will make the pain worth it. Emptiness creates space for divine increase. And that can be one of the hardest truths to swallow, because nobody likes to feel empty. Nobody wakes up hoping to feel like something is missing, like something has been poured out of them, like life took more than it gave. Emptiness feels uncomfortable, sometimes scary, sometimes humiliating. It makes you question who you are without what you used to have, without the roles you used to play, without the people who used to fill your world. But spiritually speaking, emptiness is not punishment. It is preparation. When God removes, it is rarely to leave you bare, but to make room for what you could not receive while you were full of yesterday. God will let what satisfied you in a lesser season evaporate so that your hunger can rise for the greater calling He has placed on your life. And hunger is not weakness. Hunger is a sign of readiness. Hunger tells heaven you are available. Hunger tells God your hands are open, your spirit is teachable, your heart is stretched wide and willing. Sometimes the worst feeling in the moment ends up being the greatest setup for expansion. Think about a seed before it becomes anything beautiful, before it grows into a tree or blossoms into fruit. It has to go into the ground and disappear. It has to enter darkness. It has to break open. It has to release what was inside. There is a point where it looks like nothing is happening, like everything has died. But in truth, everything is beginning. Emptiness works that same way in your life. You feel poured out, cracked open, hidden, stripped of what made you feel strong or confident, and God whispers, "You are not done. You are being planted." The ground feels like a grave, but it is actually the womb of your next season. Some people panic when they feel that divine emptiness. They run to fill the space with noise, distractions, substitutes, relationships, habits, anything that will keep them from feeling the void. But that void is holy ground. It is the place where God breathes, where God whispers new identity, where God reshapes your desires and enlarges your capacity. The danger is not the emptiness. The danger is filling it with the wrong thing before God fills it with the right thing. Look back at your life. Think about moments where you felt like something left you, and you thought you would never feel full again. Yet later, when God sent increase, when He sent new purpose, when He sent better relationships or deeper peace or greater clarity, you could look back and say, if I had still been full of that old thing, I would not have had space for this blessing. That friendship ending hurt, but it made room for alignment. That job loss shook me, but it made room for calling. That season of loneliness was painful, but it deepened my faith and sharpened my ears to the voice of God. We learn more in emptiness than we ever do in comfort. We hear God more clearly in the quiet than we do in the crowd. We grow more in the valley than we ever do on the mountaintop. And even though your emotions may not enjoy the empty places, your destiny depends on them. Sometimes God says, let it go not to break you, but to expand you. Sometimes He says, release, because He is preparing the increase. And increase requires capacity. You cannot pour new oil into vessels already filled with stale leftovers. You cannot walk into a new level holding tight to the last season's blessings and burdens. Emptiness means God is clearing your table for a feast you have not seen yet. Emptiness means heaven has marked you for promotion. It means God is trusting you enough to stretch you. Think of the widow with nothing but a little oil. Her emptiness became the stage for a miracle. Think of the disciples who had to lay down their nets, their only source of identity, income, and security. Their empty hands became the hands that carried the gospel. Think of Jesus feeding thousands. The miracle did not happen with full baskets. It started with not enough, with lack, with something that by human standards was insufficient. God specializes in filling what is empty, multiplying what is small, breathing life into what looks finished. But before He fills, He often clears. Before He pours, He empties. Before He reveals, He strips back. If you feel empty in some area, do not rush to fix it, numb it, or hide it. Instead, hold the empty space up to heaven and say, Lord, here is room. Here is space for you to show yourself strong. Here is a heart ready for what you want to do. Do not mistake emptiness for abandonment. God is not ignoring you. He is inviting you. He is creating capacity for more than you have ever carried. You are not running out. You are being made ready. When a cup is emptied, nobody cries for the liquid that left. They prepare for a fresh pour. So stand in your season of emptiness with expectation, not fear. Lift your eyes. Lift your faith. Something greater is on the way, and you will look back and thank God for every space He cleared, because those very spaces will overflow with blessing, purpose, peace, and divine increase. What left your life was never greater than what God will send. And even though that is a powerful truth, it can be hard to hold on to when you're staring at loss, when something or someone you loved, depended on, dreamed about, or built your hopes around walks away or falls apart. There's a sting in endings. There's a quiet ache in watching a chapter close when you weren't ready to turn the page. You replay conversations. You wonder what you could have done differently. You question why the door slammed so loud. And inside your heart there is this tug of war between faith and fear, hope and heartbreak. But here's the truth heaven already sees. God will never allow something to leave your life that is essential to your destiny. If it was required for the fullness of who you are becoming, God would have sustained it. The fact that it left means it had served its purpose. It means you have grown past it, outgrown it, or it was protecting you from a ceiling you didn't even realize existed. Sometimes God allows things to fall away, not because they were bad, but because they were limited. They were not big enough to carry the calling on your life. They could not stretch wide enough to fit what God intends to do next. They were not designed to journey with you into the version of you God is shaping in this very moment. When God has greater, lesser cannot remain. When God has increased, limitation must let go. When God has deeper purpose, shallow attachments will naturally drift. Think about how often you have prayed for elevation, breakthrough, blessing, abundance, new beginnings. But when God starts clearing space for them, it feels like loss. We want resurrection, but resist the burial. We cry for new fruit, but mourn every pruning. Yet every spiritual upgrade requires separation. Every movement forward requires leaving something behind. There are people, opportunities, habits, and identities you once clung to that would have suffocated the level you are stepping into. Sometimes the thing you thought you needed was actually blocking the thing God wanted to give. A relationship you idolized could have distracted you. A job you loved could have trapped you. A plan you built in your own strength might have limited you to what you could imagine instead of what God could create. God's endings are not insults. They are interventions. They are divine rearrangements. They are heaven stepping in and saying, I love you too much to let you settle. I refuse to allow you to cling to less when I have greater in motion. It's easy to miss that in the moment because pain makes you focus on what you lost instead of what is coming. But later, when the new arrives, when the blessing manifests, when peace replaces panic and purpose replaces confusion, you look back and realize what left wasn't greater. It wasn't even close. Think about biblical stories. Abraham had to leave his homeland before he could inherit a promise. Moses had to walk away from Pharaoh's palace before God could use him to deliver a nation. The disciples had to drop their nets before they could become world changers. Over and over, God removes before he reveals. He subtracts before he multiplies. He clears before he fills. Your life is following that same divine pattern. And sometimes, just sometimes, the loss is not even about preparation. Sometimes it's about protection. God saw conversations you never heard, intentions you didn't perceive, traps the enemy set behind your back. God saw the pride creeping into your spirit, the complacency forming in your comfort, the way you were settling for good when he destined you for great. So yes, it hurt when it left. Yes, it shook you. Yes, you questioned everything. But one day you will thank God for every closed door, every quiet goodbye, every no that protected you from counterfeit blessings. You will see that rejection saved you. You will understand that delay positioned you. You will realize that open hands receive more than clenched fists ever could. God does not take without giving. He does not remove without intention. He is not a destroyer of futures. He is the builder of them. And if He allowed it to leave, it wasn't central to your destiny. It was either seasonal limiting or too small for the greatness inside you. So instead of asking why did it leave, start asking what is God sending. Instead of mourning the empty place, prepare for the fullness ahead. Instead of clinging to the past, lift your eyes to promise. You are not being diminished. You are being positioned. You are not losing value. You are gaining capacity. You are not abandoned. You are aligned. Greater does not come quietly. It requires space, surrender, growth, and trust. And if God lets something walk away, it means the stage is being set. The curtain is about to rise. Heaven is preparing a blessing that will make you forget the tears you cried over anything that wasn't meant to stay. Stand firm, breathe deep, and speak this truth over your soul. What left my life was never greater than what God will send. My future is bigger than my loss. My promise is greater than my pain. My next chapter is worth everything it cost me to turn the page. Faith shifts your focus from what was to what will be, and that sounds beautiful on paper, but it becomes real in the places where life has forced you to choose between clinging to yesterday or believing that tomorrow still has promise. Faith is not a poetic idea. Faith is not a pretty church word that we sprinkle into sentences to sound holy. Faith is gritty, stretching, uncomfortable, and sometimes downright painful, because faith demands that you stop worshiping the memory of what used to be and start trusting the God who controls what is coming. When you walk by sight, you cling to what is visible, to what you once held, to what you know, to what feels safe. But when you walk by faith, you loosen your grip on the past, even the good parts of it, even the moments that felt like the peak of your existence. Faith refuses to let you put a period where God only placed a comma. Faith tells you that if God allowed a door to close, it is not because your story is over, but because He has already written another chapter waiting to unfold. So many people get stuck because they keep replaying what used to be. They rehearse success they once had. They mourn relationships that ended. They hold on to the version of themselves that fit a season that no longer exists. But faith says, look forward. Faith says the God who blessed you before is able to bless you again. Faith says your best days are not behind you. They are ahead, waiting for you to believe enough to move toward them. And it is not easy. Let us be real. It is not simple to let go of familiar patterns or once loved plans. You may have prayed over those plans, dreamed about them, poured years into them. You may have pictured a life that did not unfold the way you imagined. It hurts to watch something you built fade. It hurts to outgrow something you once prayed for. But faith whispers, do not get stuck staring at the grave of what died. Lift your eyes to resurrection. Faith is the bridge between grief and glory. It is the space between the promise and the manifestation. It is the quiet courage to say, my heart remembers what was, but my spirit refuses to stop believing in what can be. The enemy will always try to convince you that your best is behind you. He loves to whisper that the season you lost was the peak. He loves to replay memories in your mind, as if they were proof that nothing ahead could ever compare. But the enemy only fights what threatens him. If your future was small, he would leave you unbothered. If your next season had no weight, he would not waste time sending fear and nostalgia and doubt to trap you in yesterday. The very fact that your past tries to hold you hostage is evidence that your future is powerful. Faith is choosing to believe that even if the familiar is gone, God is not. Faith is deciding that even if you do not see the way yet, God is already in your tomorrow, preparing it. Picture driving a car while staring only in the rearview mirror. It is impossible to go forward safely because your eyes are in the wrong direction. So many people spiritually crash because they keep trying to move into the future while their focus is chained to the past. Faith says shift your gaze. Faith says lift your head. Faith says what was his history, but what will be his destiny. Abraham had to leave his homeland without knowing the destination. He had to trust a God who gave direction without detail. That is faith. Mary had to carry a promise nobody else understood. She had to endure confusion and whispers and uncertainty, trusting that what God birthed in her was bigger than the opinions around her. That is faith. Peter had to step out of the boat before the water felt solid. He had to test the impossible, trusting that Jesus would not call him out only to let him drown. That is faith. Faith is stepping into the unknown with God's character as your compass. It is refusing to idolize certainty and learning to worship possibility. It is believing that if God says move, the path will reveal itself under your feet. Faith also heals perspective. It teaches you to look at loss not as the end of favor, but as the beginning of transformation. It teaches you to see closed doors as divine redirection. It teaches you to interpret unanswered prayers not as abandonment, but as protection. And every time you choose faith, you are training your spirit to expect God, not just remember Him. You are retraining your emotional reflexes from fear to anticipation. You are saying to heaven, I trust you enough to let go of what was so I can receive what will be. Faith breaks the cycle of nostalgia that tries to trap you in old seasons. Faith releases bitterness because you cannot carry resentment and expectation at the same time. Faith teaches you to bless what left, because if it was meant for you, it would have stayed. And if it left, God must have something better coming. Faith will have you waking up with hope, even when circumstances have not changed yet, because faith does not wait to see before it believes. Faith believes, then eventually sees. And yes, sometimes faith feels lonely. Sometimes it feels like you are walking blindfolded, hands outstretched, heart exposed. But faith is never truly blind. Faith sees what eyes cannot see. Faith sees promise where others see emptiness. Faith feels God moving even in silence. Faith listens for the whisper of destiny, even when the noise of disappointment is loud. And here is the beautiful thing. When you focus forward in faith, the past stops holding power over you. Memories stop being anchors and start being testimonies. Loss stops feeling like punishment and becomes preparation. Your heart starts leaning into what God is building instead of what life was breaking. And one day, you look up and realize God did not just give you a next chapter. He gave you a better one. You find yourself standing in places you once doubted you would ever reach. You find yourself laughing again dreaming again, loving again, standing in blessings that make the old chapter look small. Faith did that. Faith is not running from what was. It is releasing what was so you can receive what will be. So breathe. Lift your chest. Wipe your tears if they fall. Speak life even if your voice trembles. Choose faith even when doubt screams. Look forward. Because when God writes your story, the best is never behind you. Your future is still pregnant with promise, and faith is the key that unlocks what is waiting. Greater isn't a possibility. It's a promise, and when you start to truly let that settle into the deepest parts of your spirit, something begins to shift inside you. You stop hoping in a fragile way that breaks at the first sign of trouble, and you start expecting in a confident way that cannot be shaken by circumstances. You stop living like life is happening to you, and you start living like God is working through you. A promise from God is not a maybe. It is not dependent on human agreement, on the opinions of others, or on whether your path looks smooth or chaotic at the moment. A promise from God is anchored in His character, which means even when everything around you changes, His word does not. Even when you feel unsteady, His promise stands steady. Even when seasons shift, and people shift and emotions shift, the promise does not move. It is rooted in heaven, and heaven does not waver. We often treat God's promises like they are lottery tickets. We hold them with this hesitant hope, thinking maybe if things go perfectly, and if we behave flawlessly, and if life cooperates just right, then we might receive what God said. But faith does not work like a lottery. It works like a guarantee. When God says greater is coming, greater is not a dream, it is a destination. Life might take you on a route you did not expect. You might go through seasons that make you question the timing or the process. You might cry over losses and wrestle with doubts and walk through valleys that feel longer than you wanted. But just because the road curves does not mean the promise changed. Just because the night feels long does not mean morning is canceled. God does not tease His children. He does not dangle hope in front of you just to snatch it away. If He said greater, greater is not optional. It is inevitable. The real question is not whether greatness will come, but whether you will be positioned and prepared to receive it when it does. A promise requires process. That is where people struggle. We love prophecy, but we dislike preparation. We love destiny, but we resist development. We want the blessing, but not the stretching that makes room for it. Greater sounds exciting until greater begins to demand things from you. It demands patience when you would rather rush. It demands discipline when you would rather coast. It demands trust when you would rather control. It demands that you lay down your comfort and pick up your calling. And yet, even in the discomfort, there is purpose. God uses preparation to strengthen the foundation so that when greater arrives, you can sustain it. Because what good is a blessing if it collapses the moment it arrives? What good is increase if it breaks you instead of building you? God is not just bringing greater to you. He is growing greater in you so that when the door opens, you walk through it ready, steady, and mature enough to carry what He gives. Sometimes the path to greater looks like subtraction. Sometimes it looks like delay. Sometimes it looks like unfamiliar territory that scares you at first. God might remove people who cannot walk with you into the next season. He might close opportunities that you thought were your ticket forward. He might allow discomfort in areas where you have gotten too used to settling. But every shift, every pruning, every uncomfortable moment is tied to one truth. Greater is not just coming. Greater is guaranteed. And there will come a moment where you look back and realize the things you cried about were actually the soil where God planted your increase. The moments that felt like endings were really beginnings in disguise. The prayers that felt unanswered were actually being answered in ways bigger than you imagined. Do not let temporary emotions convince you that the promise is fragile. It is not fragile. You might feel fragile. Your confidence might waver. Your patience might stretch thin. Your heart might ache as you wait. That is human. But the promise sits above your emotion. It sits above your fear. It sits above your timeline. God never said greater might show up if you perform perfectly. He said greater is yours because He declared it. He does not speak according to where you are. He speaks according to where He is taking you. He is not studying your past to decide your future. He already wrote your future and is now guiding you through it. That means even when you feel stuck, greater is still in motion. Even when nothing looks like it is changing, heaven is working behind the scenes. Even when you doubt yourself, God does not doubt what He placed inside you. And here it is the wild thing. Sometimes greater does not arrive like fireworks. Sometimes it arrives quietly, steadily, step by step. One healed place in your heart at a time. One restored dream at a time. One door opening after you thought they were all closed. One moment where you realize you are stronger than you used to be, more grounded than you used to be, more peaceful, more purposeful, more aligned. Greater is not always loud, but it is always real. And when it finally reveals itself in full, you will look back and know without question that every tear, every waiting period, every moment of confusion was part of something holy. Some people settle because they lose sight of the promise. But you cannot afford to shrink when God has spoken expansion over your life. You cannot afford to lower your expectations to match temporary circumstances. Lift your head, lift your faith, lift your imagination. God did not bring you through everything you survived just to leave you with average. He preserved you for greater. He carried you for greater. He strengthened you for greater. And what He has prepared will not just bless you, it will overflow and touch lives around you. So breathe deep, refuse to rush, refuse to fear, refuse to settle. Greater is not a dream, it is your destiny. And it is already on its way to meet you right where you are. So as we stand here today, I want you to hear this and let it sink deep into your spirit. God is not finished with you. Every loss, every setback, every door that closed, every tear that fell, every moment that felt like it was too much, none of it was wasted. God is a God of exchange, a God who replaces the empty with abundance, the broken with beauty, the ordinary with extraordinary. What you thought was the end was really the beginning of something far greater than you could ever imagine. Your past does not define you. Your losses are not the measure of your life. Faith calls you to lift your eyes, to let go of what was, to trust in what will be, and to expect the promise that greater is not a possibility, but a guarantee. So walk forward boldly, knowing that God is already at work, that He is preparing your blessing, your increase, your breakthrough. Your hands may be empty today, but they are being readied to receive a fullness that will overwhelm you with joy. Trust Him, believe Him, wait on Him, because what God will replace in your life is not just equal to what you lost. It is greater, richer, deeper, and more glorious than anything you have ever known. Step into that promise with faith and watch God prove Himself faithful.